thinking a lot about the grief journey, and grief is insane in a way that I don't hear talked about that much. I have a friend, Rachelle, who wrote a beautiful book called Humane. And she talks about how grief isn't an emotion, it's a state. And it affects us on every level. It affects us on the physical, the psychological, the existential, the sexual. Like, I think people have this idea, like, it's like, oh, are you grieving? Are you sad? But it's so much more than that. Like, as I was tracking my own process since Eric died, I was just thinking like it felt like a long, like, drug trip for a long time. And I keep thinking I'm like out of the drug trip. And then I'm like, oh, maybe I'm not out of the drug trip yet. I would call up my friend Rachelle and I would say, like, I think I'm going crazy. And then I would like tell her a list of things and she would say, you're not crazy, you're grieving. And that was like really comforting. And I'd say like some other like things that felt crazy. And she'd say, like, there's research on that. Like, you're not alone. And there was something really like nice about not being special. Because I was like, this cannot, like, this is like insane. Like, I mean, the world is filled with insane amounts of grief, you know? But I just remember, like, morally, as I think about sort of the psychological moral aspect, I remember like feeling like grief made me kind of amoral. Like, I suddenly, like, I'd spent my whole life, like, I went to divinity school and I spent my whole life thinking about like what is it to be a good person? And suddenly it just seemed so stupid. Like, I was like, ugh, why have I tried so hard to be a good person? Like, it does not matter. And I remember I was like making some decisions that were like very questionable. And I remember someone saying, like, what if someone gets hurt? And I just was like, I mean, life is pain. They'll either survive or they won't. I mean, it was like very different. Like, it's like everything changed. Like, I think there's something about when that sense of reality and safety, like, it's just like knocked out. I had like crazy magical thoughts. Like, I just would like think like what? Like I'd think like Eric was gonna come back. I was like sort of waiting and waiting and waiting. Yeah, like all these things were happening internally. And also that sense of like, who cares? Like, just like, I was also like super sure like the future didn't exist. Like, it took me a long time to like realize I actually did have to make money because just the future was not real. Like, like nothing in me believed that the future would actually come. Or I thought like God was gonna tap me out. Like, would just be like, you've lived a good life. Like, let's give this girl a break. Let's tap her out. I also couldn't parallel park. Like, I could not parallel park. And I had no memory. I couldn't read for many months. Like, I could not read. Like, my eyes did not connect to my brain suddenly in that way. And I could read for like a minute. You know, I could read for a little bit. And then I just was like, oh, I can't read. But it was like my whole memory got etch-a-sketched. I remember like meeting someone and they were like, wow, I saw that you went to Harvard. And I just was like, who cares? Like, did I? Or people would like ask about my childhood and I was like, doesn't matter. Like, nothing matters. So I'm just thinking about this. I also I'm just like tracking it. I'm just tracking it. Like, there's a way in which I just want to like make like a weird billboard and be like, whatever if you haven't, like, obviously some of you know this, like, everybody grieves differently and like we all have our own like crazy grief things. But for those who don't know grief, like, I just want to be like, it is not what you think it is. It is not like some like sad little moment. It's like sort of a shattering of reality. Like, I had to be really careful who I spend time with, because I didn't trust myself not to like crawl into a random person's lap and just be like, hold me, because I am floating away from the earth. Like there's nothing barely tethering me to the planet. Like if you don't hold on to me, I don't know where I'm gonna go. So yeah, so I want to say, I remember early on someone sent me a quote and they were like, oh, the external grief, well, what was it? It was like grief creates a split. Like there's like your external self and then this internal self where like things are just like, blah, crazy town. And I remember early on, I was like, oh, there is no split. Like this is just me at the grocery store. Like someone would be like, how are you? And I was like, my husband died, you know. But then at some point there was a little bit more of a split where people would like look at me and say like, you seem to be doing really well. And I was like, am I? I don't know. And what does doing well mean? I remember everyone was always like, are you okay? And I just remember thinking like, I'm okay not being okay. Like, no, I'm not okay, but I'm okay. Like, I'm okay not being okay. So yeah, like in a perfect world, I like have this fantasy. Like it's almost like there's a way in which like the grieving can just like lay on the floor for as long as they need. And there isn't that like weird impulse of like, when will you be productive again? When are you going to be like a person who's like returning to normal? And it's just like, it's like not happening. Yeah, I mean, obviously everyone grieves differently, and like for some people getting going is helpful. Yeah. So grief is crazy. Guess this is just like a public service announcement that maybe everybody already knows. But grief is wild. It is a rawest form of love. It is like another reality. So treat yourselves and others tenderly.